بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. ښاغلی فیلیپو ګرانډي د پناغوښتونکو په چارو کې د ملګرو ملتونو عالي کمېشنر، د رسنیو درنو استازو، راغلو میلمنو، زموږ د نن ورځې خبري ناسته ښه راغلاست. په پیل کې له ښاغلي ګرانډي څخه غوښتنه کوو چې خپله وینا ولري، له هغې پس بیا به ستاسې پوښتنې ته ځواب وویل شي. درنو خبریالانو د ترجمې وسایل هم شته، تاسو کولی شئ له هغې نه هم استفاده وکړئ. Thank you very much, His Excellency Mr. Grandi. Now I kindly request you to have your speech on the issue, and after the speech, the question will take by our media representatives. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here. So my name is Filippo Grandi. I'm the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. I'm also the head of UNHCR, the organization that deals with refugees worldwide. This is my third visit to Afghanistan as High Commissioner for Refugees. I've been here many times before. And one thing that I'd like to recall is that the Afghan displacement, either internally displaced or refugees, is still one of the largest in the world, several million people. This is one of the largest displacement crises in the world. It is also one of the oldest. Afghans have been displaced since 1979, since the Soviet invasion here in Afghanistan, and my organization has been working with Afghan refugees since then. There have been many different periods in history in which refugees went out, came back, and the number of internally displaced people has unfortunately grown over the year. Bottom line, this is still an active displacement situation that requires solution. I come here at a very specific moment of Afghanistan's evolution, history. We have a peace process going on, peace talks in Doha. We don't know which way they will be going, but they are ongoing. And we have, at the same time, we have seen an upsurge of violence, especially in the last few months. According to our colleagues in the UN, this is one of the most violent periods for civilians, for Afghan civilians. At the same time, we have a new government, and we have, starting next week or during next week, a special conference in Geneva, which I will also attend, in which I am confident there will be again international support expressed for Afghanistan. So this is the context. In this context, what about refugees and displaced? The question that I have asked all the interlocutors here is there an opportunity to try to reduce this number to solve some of these problems? After 2 days here, I've met President Ghani, I've met Vice President Amroullah Saleh, several ministers, of course the Minister of Refugees and Repatriation, Minister Akhlaki, and diplomats. I have visited Bamiyan yesterday. I am going to another field visit tomorrow. So I'm trying to form a picture of the situation. And my conclusion up to now is that on the one hand, we need to be worried that there could be more humanitarian problems. If this violence continues, this together with snow coming early, harsh winter, I think that one message that I will pass at the Geneva conference is, don't forget, it's good to plan for the long term, but in the short term, millions of Afghans, including displaced people, need humanitarian support, need food, need clean water, need health care, especially at the time of COVID, need shelter, and so forth. On the other hand, I think it is important to continue to plan for a better future. And planning for a better future sometimes is complex, is difficult. And in terms of displaced people, refugees, what does it mean? For refugees, it means investing more in the areas to which they may come back, from Pakistan and from Iran. This is in case everything goes in a positive direction, and then people will be encouraged to come back, and we need to be ready for that. And this is not just the role of UNHCR. This is not just a humanitarian operation. This is also development of the areas where refugees will go back. There are about 20 areas in the country. Yesterday I visited one in Bamiyan, which we call priority areas for return. The government has selected them, and we are supporting the government to do things in those areas. For example, yesterday I inaugurated a school for 900 children in Bamiyan. These are returnee children, but also children of the community that have not moved. So everybody benefits. And we do a lot of things like this, working in health centers, in schools, creating some job opportunities. And we're trying to get other organizations to do the same around the concept of potential area for return, priority area for return. Then there is the question of internally displaced. This is different. And you know, unfortunately, the number of internally displaced has grown, is more than 4 million now. This is, I think this is one of the largest internally displaced situations in the world, if not the largest. We have very few that are of this scale. And unfortunately, it continues to grow. This year alone, 200,000 to 300,000 more people have been displaced. So in some cases, the displacement is short-term. People flee maybe because there is conflict, but then they go back home. In more cases, however, it's difficult for them to go home. In some cases, I believe people will not go back home. They are displaced in Kabul or in Herat or in the big cities. They will stay where they are. So we need to find solutions for these displaced people. I'm happy that the president and the ministers told me that a special law that they have discussed for a long time on the allocation of government land to people in need, including displaced people, is now being finalized and hopefully issued soon. A decree, I think you call it. And this will be very important because one of the biggest problems for displaced people is where to stay. The land is not there, so they need to be given a plot of land on which then, housing can be built and so forth. So my point here is, for these 4 million displaced, we need to work more on solutions. And of course, be ready if, unfortunately, there is more displacement. Finally, some points about refugees. There are still many Afghans abroad, and millions of them. And the two countries, as you know very well, that host the most numbers are Pakistan and Iran. Now, I would like to say and put on record that it's a very difficult situation, and I know that in those countries often Afghans face many challenges, but we should also recognize that for 40 years, those countries have hosted Afghans. During all the different conflicts that this country has gone through, they have been hospitable to Afghans. And I think this should be recognized. Now, these countries have their own problems. Iran has a very difficult economic situation. Pakistan has its own challenges. They are impatient. They would like at least a number of these Afghans to return home. So my appeal is for those countries to be patient, to continue to host Afghans until the situation here improves and can allow for the return. Because if you push people to return, they will not stay. They will go back again. It will not be sustainable. I also want to conclude by saying that there is a very interesting project which the Afghan government has been conducting with some funding from the World Bank and others to issue passports to the Afghans in those two countries. This is good, because if people get passports, then they can hopefully get visas. The two countries are discussing more flexible visa arrangements. And then, this is not anymore a refugee situation. This is regular people, migrants that can move back and forth. Maybe they have business there. they can come back here. This is more beneficial to all the countries in the region than the previous situation. So this is a long-term project, which I have also discussed with the authorities here. I want to finish simply by saying that my organization is not political. We're not involved in the political discussions, but we're following them, just like you. We're following because this is very important. The outcome of the talks in Doha and political talks will determine whether this is a country able to take back its people or not. Because if there is conflict, breakdown of talks, or if the outcome of the talks does not guarantee the rights of the people, all that this country has achieved in the past 20 years, I think it will be very difficult for people that have left to find a solution and to come back home. So we need to think of that as well. My appeal is really to say to all the decision makers, the policy makers in Afghanistan, don't forget refugees and displaced. They may not be near your eye, but they should be near your heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we will ask our media colleagues if they have questions. درنو خبرانو کچېرې کومه پوښتنه ولرئ کولی شئ خپله پوښتنه مطرح کړئ تاسې. مهرباني خیال صاحب.
Thank you, Mr. I am Hiwad Mal from Shamshad TV. My question is that for years, the Afghan concern is that Pakistan take benefit from the helping that UNHCR help the Afghans that refugees in Pakistan. Pakistan take for itself. And also we see in Iran, the situation is bad for Afghan refugees. What's your answer for that concerns? Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, please, sir. Okay.
On the first point, you know, frankly, the amount of resources that we bring to these two countries is very small by now. It may have been very substantive in the 80s, in the 90s, during the Soviet invasion, during the civil war here, yes. Then we had huge programs. But frankly, by now, the assistance is not one that would generate a lot of interest in a country. It is, you know, we do what we can, but most of what refugees live on is either provided by the government, actually, or by themselves through their own means. So I wouldn't say that there is an attraction of keeping people there because it attracts assistance. That I would not say, neither in Pakistan nor in Iran. On the second point, of course, you know, the life of refugees is always tough. And there are many, many difficulties and challenges that they face. The policies of these two countries are quite good. Refugees can have access to schools, to health, to public services. Generally speaking, there are some limitations. They can work. Recently, the Pakistani government has allowed Afghans to open bank accounts, which was not the case before. This helps those that have businesses, for example. So one cannot say that it is bad. I know many situations of refugees where they don't have all these benefits. The reality on the ground is more complex, of course. We know that sometimes there can be tension, maybe some discrimination, but by and large, I would say that these are two countries that have conducted positive refugee policies. The problem is how long it has lasted, the number of these people that has been growing over the years in spite of those returning, and these countries are becoming tired of this additional responsibility. I am not, you know, I am, as I told you, the message is to them, be patient. We need to really make more progress in Afghanistan, but they want to see this progress so that people can start thinking about return.
Thank you. سوال بعدی است. فکر کنم بلا پوښتنه نشته. همکارای عزیز کنفرانس بعدی ما سخنگوی مقام رئیس جمهوری صدیق صدیقی صاحب ساعت 3 برگزار میشه. At the end, I would like to thank Mr. Filipo ګرانډي, UN High Commissioner for Refugees. The first conference is ended. The next conference will be start on 3 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.